Spelunky 2 is not your average platformer game. My initial opinion on this game was that of skepticism. I heard a lot of people talking about its difficulty, but the cute graphics seemed to say otherwise. Nonetheless, I decided to try it out for myself just to see how hard it really is. After over 200 hours of playtime, I think it's safe to say I severely underestimated this game. First of all, this isn't just a platformer. It's actually mainly a roguelike with 2D platformer elements thrown in the mix. The closest example I could think of would be something like Dead Cells, but even then the two games have very different mechanics and gameplay elements. Spelunky 2, as the title might suggest, is the second game in the series. The first game is basically the same, but has less content overall and is apparently not as difficult as Spelunky 2. Now actually there are 3 games, but Spelunky 1 and Spelunky HD are the same games, with Spelunky HD being a remaster of Spelunky 1, so to make it more simple, I'll just keep calling Spelunky 2 the second game. Another thing that I should make clear is that the game is not at all linear. You don't start a run and end it after days or even weeks of playing. This game is fast and gets straight to the point. This means covering the game in a linear fashion is a complete waste of time and does not result in a good video whatsoever. I've already scrapped 2 scripts making this video, and it's not happening a third time. Due to Spelunky 2 being a roguelike, there are some criteria that must be fulfilled. For starters, you have permadeath, which means if you die, you have to restart the whole run. Every run is also randomly generated, so you will never have the same run, which means it is up to you to improvise and adapt to succeed. Unlike some other roguelikes, this game doesn't have any real permanent progression. Sure, you can count the shortcut tunnels, but I feel like they were used more as practice than as an actual way of playing the game. There are no unlockables to get after completing certain goals or achievements, which helps the game focus more on the actual gameplay. The different playable characters are also purely cosmetic and don't alter or change the game in any way. Now, the main difficulty of the game comes from 2 things: enemies and traps. Enemies are pretty straightforward, sometimes. There are a lot of enemies in the game, and they range from something like a normal snake to a giant mech-wielding alien creature. Also, there's this, and this, and this, so yeah. Luckily though, you don't have to worry about that just yet. In the very beginning, most enemies are very simple and easy to understand. They all usually try to move towards you to deal contact damage and are pretty easy to kill. The traps are more interesting in my opinion. Let's take a look at my personal favorite, the arrow trap. First of all, that was a lie. I hate the arrow trap.
And I have a
plasma cannon.
Haha, let me prove it.
Every time you get shot by it, you feel your sanity slowly slipping away. The funny thing is, the arrow trap isn't even the worst trap out there. Have you ever gotten hit by a spark trap while wearing a jetpack? You straight up just don't have a good time. I never find that there is a single point in time where nothing happens in the game. There are plenty of enemies moving around each level, and the amount of traps you can find always remains pretty high. Not every trap is built the same way, but enemies help in making them more dangerous by forcing you into unfavorable situations where the trap can become a serious issue. The pressure of always being on top of things can also really start to break some players and cause them to fumble and lose it all when it really matters. Some of the challenges in the game also require extra tasks to be completed, which can add extra restrictions to the run. One example is the eggplant run, and I'm sure anyone who tried it can agree that it is indeed very painful. As you journey through the levels, you come across more unique enemies and traps, all of which are out to get you with varying degrees of success. You see, the difficulty in this game isn't at all consistent. In fact, it's the complete opposite. Each area is unique, and the components that it is made up of dictate just how difficult it is to traverse. For example, the first area, the dwelling, is a pretty simple, straightforward area. Now compare that to the temple. It's quite a step up if I do say so myself. But don't just take my word for it, here's some scientific data to back up my claims. The dwelling has 2 main threats, which are the arrow trap and the horned lizard. The temple has Anubis, small crush blocks, large crush blocks, sorceresses, necromancers, mummified cats, and crocmen. All these are very capable of ruining your run, and the simple fact that they are all concentrated on one screen should be enough of a sign that the temple is extremely dangerous. Now, I'm throwing around the word dangerous and difficult a lot, but surely the game has certain mechanics designed to help the player out. In a way, yes, but also no. The shop can be found throughout the different areas and can house a wide selection of resources and equipment that can be bought for money. The prices are reasonable for the most part, but sometimes you might be just a bit short and can't buy what you're looking for. What do you do then? You steal it. On second thought, that might not be a good idea. The shopkeeper seems like a normal guy until you do anything bad to him or the shop. At first I thought this was straight up unfair, but after some thinking I can understand why the developers did this. On one hand, you get all the shop items for free, but also run the risk of getting absolutely obliterated by the shopkeeper if he catches you off guard. The shop contents themselves are quite interesting. You have your simple bombs and ropes, which can help you get around, but then you have the more interesting goods. Something like the teleporter is quite useful in a skilled player's hands, but can prove to be an unskilled adventurer's demise. Then you have an assortment of tech gear, which proves to be useful in most situations, but is quite flammable as shown earlier. You also have a bunch of clothes, which imbues you with the power of super jumps and slow fall. The shop sells most of the items that can be found in the game. Some items are special though, and require other means of acquisition. Ending a run successfully requires you to kill one of the 2 final bosses in the game, or get past about 95 space levels with a huge astral jellyfish. At this point, don't question it. The bosses in the game are pretty difficult if you don't know what you're doing. Just like with the rest of this game, the bosses can prove to be fatal if not taken with extreme precaution. It's also pretty helpful to have excess resources to make the fights easier, because simply whipping them can prove to be difficult and tedious. Both bosses have special arenas with stuff like bubbles or a spike floor, and the fights aren't confined to simple patterns. This makes it more interesting because the bosses react differently depending on what you do, so the fights will be much more unique, which in my opinion is very good game design. So after all is said and done, why is the game so difficult? After a lot of thinking, and playing, and some more thinking, I seem to have determined the one source of all the pain and suffering. You see, humans aren't perfect. We are slow, and it takes time for our brain to comprehend things. When you take a human and place him into a game like this, it's obvious that the downfall will be the lack of ability to manage everything that is going on at once. It's the potential chaos factor which is so high and results in situations that are impossible to process by a human. The game is like a large Rube Goldberg machine. It has so many moving parts that it gets difficult to determine the outcome of certain situations. Combine that with the fact that everything is happening in real time, and you have yourself a recipe for a hellishly difficult game. But at the same time, that doesn't mean the game isn't fun. In fact, I think this is one of my favorite games out there at the moment. The lack of predictability and the ease with which you can play the game makes it so accessible and replayable that I'm fine with dying over and over and over again. Learning from my mistakes feels meaningful, and it's extremely satisfying to get better at the game. There's also a bunch of secrets and cool interactions in this game that makes it feel so engaging and alive. I can go on and on with the positives, but then I feel like they would lose their meaning, and that's not what I'm here for. The TLDR is that this game will kick your ass with the sheer amount of random and wacky content until you learn to manage it and thrive. After that, the game becomes your oyster, and you gain the ability to truly see all the hard work and passion the developers put into it. It's definitely a 10 out of 10 game, and I can't recommend it enough. Oh yeah, there's also multiplayer with up to 4 people, so you can probably imagine the chaos that can potentially unfold in that. Also, sorry for my voice sounding so dead. It's just little voice acting a bunch of Deltarune characters while playing through the game in one 10-hour long sitting. This actually happened on my friend's 24-hour stream, and he was the one who got me interested in Deltarune in the first place, so check him out on his in the description. What? Really? That's very, very unfortunate. That's a paste and some extra bombs and ropes, so we're kind of set for early game. So, you know, why not? I was hoping that would be like a scorpion or something. I've also gotten an alien from a pot, which I actually recorded, which is pretty nice. Didn't know it could happen. Dude, I'm done. I'm so done, man. Oh my god. Oh. Oh, it's so painful, man. It sucks. Whatever.